Hello again. Sabrina Carpenter. Short and sweet. I'm going to keep this one short and sweet. It's not because it's a bad album either. I do think this album is actually decent. And to give some context, this is my first experience with any kind of Sabrina Carpenter record or even song. I haven't listened to Please, Please, Please or Espresso until just yesterday. And going into this record, I was kind of expecting just this really generic and very typical pop album experience. With a critic score of a 66 and a user score of a 64, going into this album, that's what I was expecting. But to my surprise, this album was okay, and I liked it actually a good amount. There's some parts of it that just don't really stick with me, and there's some parts that just do kind of play into that typical pop album experience where it doesn't really do much for me. There is some moments on here that do show why she's as popular as she is. And my biggest thing that I do really enjoy with this record is that the personality of Sabrina Carpenter does really show through on a lot of these songs. And it's endearing and it's also quite entertaining in some funny ways. The singles, for example, the Please 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 hook, while it is so blunt and frank and to the point, it's really just funny and also just really endearing in a way, and also just really, really catchy. Not to mention as well, I do really like this kind of warbly, kind of synth kind of sound going through. And Sabrina Carpenter's vocal performance kind of reminds me of this kind of like a country artist in a way. And kind of contrasting, putting these two things together, it just creates this really fun and really just goofy experience, but in a very fun way. Espresso is a little bit more of kind of that glitzy, glamoury pop that has become very popular. But it's another example where I think just the lyrics and the way that she kind of goes through the song, it just really just captures this really fun and not so serious personality. And I think a lot of pop artists do take themselves incredibly seriously, but I think Sabrina Carpenter really does not, and it does make for some really, really fun experiences and some really where some lyrics are so absolutely dumb that they come across to being really funny. I believe there's one part in some part of the album where she's like, "Where art thou? Why aren't you thou on top of me?" It's just like, and then there's others where it's just like, "I'm a bee, come pollinate," and why don't we go outside? But the ceiling fan's so nice. There's these a lot of these innuendos, and there's a lot of these really just goofy and not so serious lyrical kind of moments that just kind of, again, just really show a really fun and just charismatic personality of Sabrina Carpenter. There is some moments here too that you do get a little bit more versatility and I guess a little bit more diversity. I'm thinking of Sharpest Tool, I'm thinking of Coincidence, I'm thinking of Slim Pickens, where it does kind of go back into a more acoustic driven and almost country sounding album. And these moments here, I honestly didn't expect these to happen. But the way that they go over and the way that these vocal performances, and Sabrina Carpenter is actually a great vocalist. Sometimes when you look at a pop artist, sometimes you could see their vocals as kind of plain. But I think Sabrina Carpenter does really well in these moments where the all the synths and all the glammy stuff is stripped back, and you just get a lot of acoustic guitar driven performances. I think of Juno's example, and especially Sharpest Tool. Sharpest Tool is probably one of my favorite songs on the record just because it really does kind of subvert expectations a little bit, especially for me. And again, and even in these moments where it is kind of stripped back, I can think of Slim Pickens, for example, where it is a little bit more traditional. It's a little bit more kind of going into that folksy country pop kind of sound. But then you have these moments where it's just like, I can't find the perfect man, so I'll stop moaning and bitching. And all these kind of little things that just add on to the personality with a little bit of a different instrumental palette. It does really help to kind of have those times. There is some parts of the record, however, that do feel kind of very bland. When I think about it, probably the most bland song on here is Good Graces, which is the second track. Taste is eh. Taste is just kind of also plays into that thing where it does feel kind of H&M, kind of mall kind of aesthetic, where it just kind of really just falls in the background. But Good Graces is definitely one of those where it just there's nothing really distinct about the instrumental. Sabrina Carpenter doesn't really bring anything lyrically or vocally. It just sounds very, very generic. That's probably the biggest problem I have with some of these songs is that they do kind of fall into that category of being very simplistic, very typical, very generic. But I think she does a good enough job to make these songs interesting on their own and diversify the sound into something that does warrant a little bit of replay value and does warrant a little bit of deeper dives. And again, overall, I think this is just a fun album. It's not like this amazing lyrical masterpiece that we'll be dissecting for years to come, but it is just a really fun, goofy, and not so serious pop record. So, it's time to destroy my credibility. And I have been jumping around on the rating on this from a 5 to a 6. There was even a point where I jumped to a 7, but I think a 6 out of 10 is probably where I'm going to go. It's just fun. While there's problems, it's just fun. And that's just my really just short and just very to the point review of Short and Sweet by Sabrina Carpenter. What are your thoughts on this record? Let me know if you love it, if you hate it. I guess another aside before I close out, I'm noticing in her vocal performances, there's a little bit of these Ariana Grande and also Casey Musgraves kind of vocal inflections. I don't know, that's just me. You can let me know in the comments, though. That was just something that I noticed I was listening to the record. But thank you very much for watching, and I'll talk to you again soon.